The store's door burst open, and every head turned as Serena stepped in with a quiet intensity that spoke of hidden truths. Arthur's heart pounded while her steady gaze cut through the murmur of routine, hinting at a secret long kept. In that electrifying moment, the familiar order began to crumble, setting the stage for a revelation that would shatter old prejudices. What happened next shocked everyone, and set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Stay with me, this is a story you need to hear. Before we start the story, comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from today, and if you find this story impactful, don't forget to subscribe for more. The city woke slowly to a cool, crisp morning, its early lights spilling over busy streets and quiet alleys alike. In the heart of this vibrant urban landscape, a modest yet well-kept store stood as a silent witness to the daily dramas of life. The gentle murmur of distant traffic, the soft clatter of footsteps on pavement, and the occasional honk of an early commuter blended into a natural symphony that set the stage for a day that would soon prove anything but ordinary. Inside the store, every detail spoke of careful order and quiet dignity. The polished floors gleamed under the steady glow of fluorescent lights, their surface reflecting the bright, shifting colors of the merchandise neatly arranged on the shelves. A subtle mix of fresh produce and the faint aroma of cleaning agents filled the air, while a soft, melodic jazz tune floated from hidden speakers, lending an unexpected air of sophistication to the space. The environment, though unassuming at first glance, buzzed with an energy that promised hidden depths and untold stories. At the center of this meticulously managed domain was Mr. Arthur Monroe, the store manager whose presence had become as much a part of the store as the carefully arranged goods. Arthur had spent over 20 years shaping the store into a model of efficiency and order. He moved with a deliberate, measured grace, a man whose every gesture and word was calculated to maintain control over his environment. His uniform was always crisp, his shoes polished to a mirror shine, and his expression usually one of calm authority. Yet beneath this disciplined exterior, there simmered a quiet, unspoken prejudice that he rarely admitted to himself. It was an old, stubborn part of him, a relic of past experiences and beliefs that, despite the passing years, still colored his view of the world in subtle but undeniable ways. Arthur prided himself on the store's smooth operation. He believed that every detail, from the arrangement of products to the precise scheduling of his staff, was essential to keeping the unpredictable outside world at bay. For him, the store was a sanctuary of predictability, a safe harbor where every customer was expected to follow the unspoken rules of civility and order. However, deep inside, as he reviewed the day's tasks and plans, Arthur couldn't shake the nagging feeling that change was in the air, a change that might force him to confront ideas he had long held without question. Among his team was a young employee named Liam, whose gentle nature and quiet optimism provided a stark contrast to Arthur's stern demeanor. Liam had only recently joined the team, but his eagerness and kindness had quickly made him a favorite among both customers and colleagues. His eyes shone with the hopeful belief that every person carried a story worth listening to, and he worked each day with a sense of purpose that reminded everyone around him of the beauty inherent in even the smallest acts of care. Alongside Liam was Maria, a seasoned cashier whose empathetic smile and sharp wit had seen her through countless challenges. Maria's warm presence made the store feel welcoming, a place where every transaction was more than a mere exchange of goods. It was a brief meeting of lives, each carrying its own struggles and dreams. Then, as if summoned by the very pulse of the day, the entrance door swung open with a gentle chime. In walked Serena Brooks, a woman whose quiet confidence immediately drew the eyes of everyone in the store. Serena moved with an elegance that was both understated and magnetic. Her attire was simple yet refined, and the calm assurance in her step set her apart from the usual flow of customers. There was a mystery in her dark eyes, a depth that hinted at experiences far richer and more complex than what the casual observer might assume. Though her smile was reserved and her words few, Serena's presence seemed to fill the space with an unspoken promise, a subtle challenge to every preconceived notion about who she was and what she might represent. Serena's arrival did not go unnoticed. Arthur's gaze, usually so steady and impassive, flickered with a mixture of curiosity and something harder to define, a guarded skepticism perhaps, or a lingering remnant of old biases. He had come to know every regular customer in his store, every face that fit into the neat mosaic of his daily routine. Yet here was Serena, new and enigmatic, her very presence a disruption to the expected order. As she moved slowly along the aisles, her fingers lightly grazing the surfaces of carefully arranged items, the atmosphere seemed to shift imperceptibly. The light caught the subtle gleam in her eyes, and for a moment, the store's organized hum of activity took on the cadence of a quiet drama. Liam noticed the change immediately. While he continued restocking shelves with a soft determination, his eyes frequently darted towards Serena. He remembered the stories his grandmother had told him about how a single meeting could alter the course of one's day, or even life. To Liam, Serena's calm, yet resolute demeanor was like the first note of a melody that hinted at profound change. Every step she took, every measured glance, seemed to echo with the possibility of new beginnings and the promise of a challenge that might disrupt the status quo. Maria, too, sensed that something was different. As she greeted customers with her characteristic warmth, her eyes never strayed far from Serena, whose quiet strength was both admirable and, in a way, unsettling. Maria had long learned that every person who walked through the store's doors carried a hidden story, a mixture of hope, regret, and dreams unfulfilled. She wondered silently if Serena's graceful composure was the result of a life filled with quiet victories, or if it was a mask to hide wounds that ran deep. In her heart, Maria believed that everyone deserved empathy, no matter how their exterior might seem to conflict with the expectations of the world around them. Throughout the morning, as the store gradually filled with the usual ebb and flow of urban life, subtle signs of tension began to weave their way through the routine. Arthur found himself casting lingering, thoughtful looks in Serena's direction. Each time their eyes met, there was an unspoken exchange, a challenge, perhaps, or an invitation to question long-held beliefs. Serena, for her part, never offered more than a polite nod or a gentle smile. But behind those quiet gestures lay layers of meaning, hints of a past filled with both hardship and quiet triumph. Her reserved nature seemed to carry the weight of countless stories, and with each step, she both defied and conformed to the expectations of those around her. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Commuters rushed along the sidewalks, their faces a tapestry of exhaustion, hope, and determination. The distant hum of engines, the rustle of newspapers, and the sporadic laughter of passers-by created a backdrop that was as unpredictable as it was vibrant. In contrast, the store remained a carefully curated space, a little island of order in a sea of chaos. Every reflective surface, every soft sound, every carefully placed object contributed to an environment that was both inviting and charged with the energy of anticipation. As the morning advanced, small details within the store began to reveal themselves as parts of a larger, unfolding narrative. In a quiet corner near the back, a well-worn wooden counter displayed the gentle scars of years gone by, marks that spoke silently of the store's long history and the myriad lives that had brushed past its doors. There, a faded photograph of the original owners, a modest trophy from a bygone award ceremony, and a handwritten note of gratitude from a loyal customer reminded anyone who cared to look that the store was much more than a place of commerce. It was a repository of memories, a silent keeper of stories that ranged from the deeply personal to the broadly communal. Liam moved through these aisles with an awareness that belied his youth. He carefully arranged items and restocked shelves, yet his mind wandered to the idea that even the smallest interactions could ripple outward to create significant change. He watched Serena as she paused at a display of handcrafted goods, her eyes softening as she traced the intricate details of a piece of art. There was something profoundly moving in the way she appreciated the beauty around her, a silent acknowledgement that every item, every carefully arranged shelf, was a reflection of human creativity and resilience. In that moment, Liam felt as though he were witnessing the unfolding of a story that was as old as time itself, a narrative of hope, struggle, and quiet rebellion against the injustices of the world. Maria, standing at her register, exchanged a few soft words with a regular customer before her attention was drawn once more to Serena. The woman's measured movements and subtle expressions seemed to speak of a life that had weathered storms with grace. "Sometimes," Serena murmured as she gently picked up a small, delicate ornament, "the tiniest things remind us of the strength we carry inside." Her voice was barely above a whisper, yet it carried an undeniable weight, a testament to the depth of her inner world. Maria, recognizing the quiet power in those words, offered a warm smile. It was a small moment, yet one that encapsulated the unspoken themes of the day: the struggle against injustice, the quiet resilience in the face of prejudice, and the enduring hope for personal growth. Arthur, meanwhile, retreated briefly to his modest office, a space that overlooked the main floor. Behind a thick glass window, he studied the scene unfolding before him on the security monitors. His eyes, sharp and calculating, took in every detail, every movement, every glance exchanged between Serena and the other customers. There was a persistent undercurrent of unease in his thoughts, a worry that this new presence might unsettle the delicate balance he had so painstakingly maintained. The familiar rhythm of his daily routine was suddenly interspersed with moments of introspection, as he questioned whether his assumptions about the world were as solid as he had always believed. The silent images on the screen stirred memories of a younger self, one who had once embraced possibility and change with an open heart before the hard edges of time had etched themselves onto his soul. The interplay of light and shadow in the store took on a symbolic quality as the morning wore on. Sunbeams filtered through the large front windows, creating patterns on the polished floor that danced and shifted with every passing minute. These luminous patches, intermingled with pockets of cool shadow, lent the space a dreamlike quality, a subtle reminder that beauty often emerges from contrast. In one such patch of light, Serena lingered near a display of artisanal crafts, her expression thoughtful as she considered each item with deliberate care. Her presence there was a quiet challenge to the notion that appearances could easily reveal one's true worth. There was a spark in her eyes, a glimmer of determination and hidden sorrow that suggested a past marked by both struggle and triumph, a life that had defied easy categorization. Every sound within the store, the soft rustle of shopping bags, the occasional clink of a dropped item, the steady hum of hushed conversations, became a part of the unfolding drama. Outside, the city's sounds mingled with the distant echoes of a subway train and the murmur of early morning chatter, forming a backdrop that was both chaotic and rhythmically soothing. Yet inside, time seemed to slow, each second weighted with significance. Arthur's heart beat a little faster as he considered the implications of Serena's quiet defiance. The steady tick of the clock on the wall became a metronome for his growing apprehension, each tick a reminder that the moment for confrontation, and perhaps change, was drawing near. In one particularly poignant moment, Serena's eyes caught sight of a small pendant displayed on a shelf. The delicate piece of jewelry, with its soft, shimmering light, captivated her attention as if it held the secret to a long-forgotten truth. For a few heartbeats, she stood transfixed, her gaze fixed on the pendant's intricate design. In that quiet instant, the world outside seemed to recede, leaving only the soft glimmer of light and the silent story it told. It was a moment of introspection, a gentle revelation that hinted at a past filled with hidden pain and quiet resilience, a past that had shaped her into the person she was today. Arthur, observing from his vantage point, felt a stirring of conflicting emotions. There was a part of him that admired the silent strength Serena exuded, yet another part, burdened by years of rigid routine and unspoken prejudices, felt threatened by the unyielding challenge she posed to his carefully ordered world. He recalled his early days in the business, when every new face had been a welcome sign of potential and promise. Now, with the weight of decades pressing upon him, those memories seemed both distant and painfully relevant. The quiet glow of the pendant, the measured grace of Serena's movements, and the subtle interplay of light and shadow all conspired to shake the foundations of everything he had long taken for granted. As the morning edged towards its peak, the store began to fill with a diverse tapestry of lives, each person unknowingly drawn into the unfolding narrative. Regular customers drifted in and out with habitual ease, yet their eyes occasionally darted toward the unfolding scene, as if they too sensed that the day held a secret beyond routine commerce. Liam continued his tasks with quiet determination, his mind filled with thoughts of possibility and the hope that every encounter could be a step towards something greater. Maria, ever the empathetic soul, greeted each customer with a smile that seemed to reach deep into their hearts, offering a silent promise of understanding in a world that was often quick to judge. In the midst of it all, Arthur remained in his quiet office, his gaze locked onto the monitors and his thoughts turning in circles. He knew that the encounter with Serena was not just another disruption in the daily routine. It was a portent of change, a sign that the very assumptions he had built his life upon might soon be challenged. The soft hum of the air conditioning, the rhythmic ticking of the clock, and the distant sounds of the bustling city outside all served as reminders that time was inexorable and that every moment carried the potential for transformation. By the time the sun climbed higher and the store reached a gentle crescendo of activity, the initial shock of Serena's presence had given way to a subtle, pervasive tension, a quiet awareness that something significant was unfolding. Every interaction, every glance, every softly spoken word was part of a larger tapestry that wove together the themes of injustice, empathy, and the slow, sometimes painful journey toward personal growth. For Arthur, each passing moment was a small battle between the familiar comfort of order and the disquieting allure of change. And though he had always believed that maintaining control was the key to a harmonious life, the silent strength of Serena's presence began to sow the seeds of doubt in that carefully cultivated belief. In the soft afternoon light that filtered through the large front windows, the store became a microcosm of life itself, a place where past and present, tradition and possibility, conflict and resolution mingled in a delicate balance. Every detail, from the gentle clink of a shopping cart to the soft hum of conversation, carried a quiet significance, hinting at the deeper truths that lay hidden beneath the surface. And as Arthur sat alone in his office, his mind heavy with the unspoken implications of the morning's events, he could not help but feel that the day was poised on the brink of something irreversible. The morning had given way to a calm, measured anticipation, a pause filled with unspoken questions, and the soft murmur of hearts in quiet rebellion. Arthur knew that the encounter with Serena was only the beginning of a journey that would force him to confront not only the biases he had long harbored, but also the possibility of redemption and change. In that charged moment, as the store continued its steady rhythm and the soft light danced upon every surface, the stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of his beliefs. Without a word, every face in the store seemed to echo the same silent promise, that beneath the veneer of everyday life lay a power capable of transforming hearts and minds. As the day pressed on, the air grew heavier with anticipation. Arthur's inner conflict deepened, each thought a subtle ripple against the still surface of his carefully maintained composure. He understood that the moment was coming, a moment when the quiet resistance embodied by Serena would challenge everything he had believed about control, respect, and the nature of worth. In that silent, almost imperceptible shift, the store, with all its carefully arranged order, had become a crucible where old prejudices and emerging truths would soon collide. The promise of change hung in the air like the soft echo of a long-forgotten melody. With each tick of the clock and every muted conversation, the store seemed to whisper that this day was not like any other, a day when the barriers between judgment and understanding would begin to crumble, making way for a transformation that was as inevitable as the rising sun. And as the final notes of the morning faded into a quiet, expectant silence, Arthur sat back, his eyes fixed on the door through which Serena had entered, knowing that the coming hours held the potential to redefine not just a single encounter, but the very nature of his own heart. In that delicate pause between routine and revelation, the humble store transformed into a stage where every soul present was both actor and witness. The ordinary rhythms of life had taken on an extraordinary cadence, and as the day continued its slow, relentless march, the seeds of change, nurtured by quiet defiance and unexpected beauty, began to take root. It was a moment of introspection, of silent acknowledgement that the future, however uncertain, held the promise of a new beginning. And so, in the soft interplay of light and shadow, in the gentle hum of the store's heartbeat, the first act of a journey was quietly, irrevocably set in motion. As the day wore on, the gentle rhythm of the store began to give way to an undercurrent of tension that no one could quite name. The soft chatter of customers mingled with the rustle of shopping bags and the occasional clink of a dropped item, yet beneath these familiar sounds lay a growing sense of unease. Arthur's eyes, which had once simply observed, now lingered a moment too long on Serena as she moved slowly between aisles, her calm presence gradually transforming into a silent provocation. Every measured step she took seemed to defy the rigid order Arthur had so meticulously maintained, and the more he watched, the more his inner doubts began to stir. Serena continued her quiet exploration of the store, her hands lightly caressing the edges of finely crafted items as if in conversation with their history. To a casual onlooker, her interest appeared purely aesthetic. But for Arthur, every glance, every subtle movement, was loaded with a significance he could neither ignore nor fully understand. His thoughts churned restlessly as he recalled memories of past encounters, times when a new face had disrupted his carefully curated world. Now, as he observed Serena's deliberate attention to detail, those old insecurities returned, fueling a growing suspicion that there was more to her than met the eye. Liam, ever the gentle observer, noticed the tightening of Arthur's jaw and the fleeting shadow of discomfort that passed over his eyes. He had seen his manager's disposition change many times, but never with such intensity. One afternoon, while restocking a shelf of artisanal goods, Liam found himself stealing glances at the exchange of subtle looks between Arthur and Serena. The air felt charged, as though the unspoken tension between them was drawing invisible lines across the space. "Imagine if you were in this situation," Liam murmured quietly to himself, wondering how a single presence could disrupt the harmony of a place that once felt so secure. In a quiet corner near the front, Maria was at her register, her eyes soft but watchful. She had seen enough to know that every person who walked through the door carried their own burdens and secrets. When a customer complimented Serena on her taste for the finer things, Maria's heart skipped a beat. Not because of the compliment itself, but because it hinted at a narrative she sensed was hidden behind Serena's composed exterior. "Sometimes," she would later confide in a hushed tone to Liam during a brief lull in activity, "a person's quiet grace hides storms of the past. And it seems some storms are about to break." It wasn't long before the first clear sign of conflict emerged. On a bright, seemingly ordinary afternoon, Serena paused at a display of delicate porcelain figurines. Her eyes, filled with an inner light, rested on a particular piece, a small statuette that depicted a graceful dancer. As she reached out to pick it up, Arthur's voice cut through the gentle hum of the store, crisp and unervingly measured. "Miss, might I ask why you are selecting such an expensive item today?" he inquired, his tone laced with a formality that bordered on reproach. Serena looked up, her dark eyes meeting his with a calm steadiness. "I find beauty in its craftsmanship," she replied softly, her voice carrying neither defensiveness nor bravado. Yet behind her words lay a quiet insistence that left little room for further questioning. The moment hung in the air, an exchange that seemed simple on its surface, yet was charged with years of unspoken assumptions and biases. Customers nearby exchanged curious glances, and the store's ambient music seemed to fade into the background as the subtle conflict took center stage. Liam stepped forward, his gentle tone a soft counterpoint to the rigidity in Arthur's voice. "Sir, perhaps we should allow Miss Brooks her own choices," he suggested, trying to ease the mounting tension without directly confronting his manager's approach. Arthur's eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment, the store fell into a brief, heavy silence. "I only seek to understand," he insisted, though his words carried a note of authority that made it clear he was not open to debate. Serena, maintaining her composed dignity, simply offered a polite nod. "Understanding can come in many forms," she said, her words measured and deliberate, as though she were planting a seed of thought in the minds of those listening. In the days that followed, the encounter at the figurine display became a quiet echo in the background of daily activities. Yet the tension it had unleashed continued to ripple through every interaction. Arthur found himself increasingly preoccupied with Serena's presence. His internal monologue became a battleground of old prejudices and an emerging, though reluctant, curiosity. Each time he caught her admiring a new product or speaking briefly with a customer, the conflict within him deepened. He began to question whether his long-held beliefs were truly as justified as he had always thought, or whether they were merely relics of a past that no longer belonged in this changing world. One particularly busy afternoon, the store was filled to capacity. The air was thick with a combined sense of fresh produce, baked goods, and the subtle aroma of coffee wafting from a small cafe area in the corner. In the midst of this controlled chaos, Serena found herself drawn to a section of luxury skincare products, a collection that sparkled under the soft lighting and promised rejuvenation and beauty. As she browsed through the neatly arranged bottles, her thoughtful expression was interrupted by Arthur's brisk approach. "Miss Brooks," he began, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable undercurrent of tension, "I noticed you've been spending a considerable amount of time in our premium section today. May I ask if you have any questions about these products?" His inquiry, though couched in the formality of customer service, felt more like an interrogation. Serena regarded him calmly. "I am interested in quality," she replied, her tone even and polite. "Quality often comes at a cost, but it also speaks to a history of excellence. I appreciate products that are crafted with care." Her words, simple as they were, seemed to challenge the unspoken assumptions that Arthur held. It was as if she were daring him to look beyond the surface, to see the layers of meaning that lay hidden beneath her calm exterior. The conversation could have ended there, but fate had other plans. A minor misunderstanding soon escalated into a full-blown confrontation. As Serena carefully selected a high-end moisturizer, a voice from behind interrupted her. A customer, who had been observing the exchange with keen interest, remarked loudly, "It must be nice to have money to spend on such luxuries. Not everyone can afford quality like this." The comment, though intended as a casual observation, immediately drew attention. Arthur's eyes flashed with a mixture of indignation and an unspoken challenge. "I believe we should refrain from such comments in this store," he said sharply, his tone more authoritative than before. "We are here to serve every customer with respect, regardless of their means." Yet even as he spoke these words, there was a subtle tension in his voice, a tension that hinted at his own internal struggle with the assumptions he was forced to confront. Serena, holding the moisturizer delicately in her hand, met his gaze steadily. "Respect is something that must be earned on both sides," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of sorrow that belied her calm demeanor. "Sometimes people forget that appearances can be deceiving, and that true worth is measured by actions and character, not by wealth or the lack thereof." Her words, simple yet profound, seemed to ripple through the store, leaving both customers and staff with a moment of reflective silence. Liam, who had been quietly watching the unfolding drama, felt a lump form in his throat. He stepped forward again, his voice gentle and earnest. "Maybe we should take a moment to remember that every person here has their own story. What we see on the outside is only a small part of who they are." His appeal to empathy resonated with several customers, who nodded in agreement even as murmurs of discontent lingered in the air. The incident marked a turning point. In the days that followed, the store became a stage for a series of small, yet significant interactions. Arthur found himself increasingly at odds with his own strict rules. He began to question why he felt so threatened by Serena's calm insistence on her own dignity. Late one afternoon, as he reviewed the day's sales in his office, he stared at a framed photo on his desk, a picture of himself from years past, when his face was softer and his eyes held more hope than they did now. The memory stirred something within him, a forgotten belief in the possibility of change. He wondered, if only for a moment, whether his own biases had been clouding his judgment. Meanwhile, Serena's presence continued to inspire quiet conversations among the customers. Over time, a few began to speak openly about the challenges of being judged by appearances alone. In hushed tones, they shared personal anecdotes of misunderstanding and the slow, painful process of breaking free from prejudices. Sometimes, a middle-aged man confided to another, "It takes someone like her to remind us that true value lies in the soul, not in what meets the eye." These whispered conversations, though subtle, began to weave a new narrative within the store, a narrative of introspection, empathy, and the slow blossoming of understanding. Even Liam, who had always been the epitome of quiet optimism, found himself grappling with the complexities of human nature. One evening, after closing time, he sat down with Maria behind the counter. "Do you think we can really change the way people see each other?" he asked softly, his eyes searching hers for answers. Maria, with her years of quiet wisdom, replied, "Change is slow, Liam. It starts with a single moment, a moment when someone dares to look beyond the surface." Tonight, I saw that moment in her eyes. And I believe deep down that even the hardest hearts can be softened by kindness. As the store settled into the twilight hours, the events of the day began to leave their mark. Arthur, still wrestling with his inner turmoil, decided to take a walk outside during a brief break. The city was bathed in the soft glow of dusk, and the cool air carried the scent of rain yet to fall. Lost in thought, he recalled the firmness of Serena's words and the gentle conviction with which she had spoken about quality and respect. Each step he took felt heavy with unspoken questions, and as he walked past bustling street vendors and quiet parks, he began to see the city in a new light, one where differences might not always lead to conflict, but could instead offer opportunities for growth. Back in the store, the next day brought further layers of tension and unexpected moments of revelation. Serena, ever the silent enigma, returned to the store with the same calm assurance. Yet this time, her interactions carried an air of quiet determination. While she continued to browse the aisles with measured care, her eyes met those of several customers who now regarded her with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Whispers about her mysterious past began to circulate, hints of a story that ran much deeper than anyone had imagined. Some speculated about her origins, while others wondered if her calm defiance was a mask hiding a lifetime of hardship, or perhaps an untold fortune. One afternoon, as the store hummed with the usual activity, a small commotion near the premium skincare section caught everyone's attention. A dispute had erupted between a regular customer and a staff member over the authenticity of a product's price. The disagreement, initially minor, quickly escalated as voices rose and tensions flared. Arthur rushed to the scene, his authoritative presence attempting to restore order. But as he intervened, he noticed something that made him pause. Serena had stepped forward, her expression one of quiet resolve, and offered to mediate the situation. "Let us all take a moment to breathe," she said softly, her voice carrying a gentle command that silenced the heated exchange. Sometimes, in our haste to prove a point, we forget that respect is the foundation of any true resolution. Her words, delivered with a calm authority that belied her unassuming appearance, diffused the anger in the room. Slowly, the voices subsided, and the regular customer, chastened by her presence, nodded in reluctant agreement. After the incident, as the store's energy settled into a reflective calm, Arthur found himself drawn once more into conversation with Serena. In a quiet corner near the back, away from prying eyes and lingering whispers, he spoke in a tone that was softer than usual. "Miss Brooks, I must confess that your actions today have given me much to think about," he began, his voice low and hesitant. "I have long believed that maintaining order meant adhering to strict rules, but your approach, it has made me wonder if there is a different way to look at the world, a way that embraces the unexpected." Serena regarded him for a long moment, her dark eyes reflecting a mixture of empathy and quiet strength. "Mr. Monroe," she replied carefully, "life is rarely as simple as the rules we set for ourselves. There is beauty in the unexpected, and sometimes the very things we fear can lead us to our greatest growth. I do not seek to disrupt order, but rather to remind us that beneath every assumption lies a story waiting to be understood." Her words, gentle yet resonant, hung in the air between them. For a moment, the distance between their beliefs seemed to narrow, bridged by a mutual, if unspoken, understanding of the complexities of human nature. Yet even as Arthur's heart softened slightly, the internal conflict within him continued to wage its silent war. He could not fully let go of the ingrained biases that had defined him for so many years, even as Serena's calm defiance challenged him to reconsider everything he had taken for granted. Over the next several days, the store became a crucible of small, yet profound interactions that further deepened the rising tension. Arthur found himself caught between the familiar comfort of order and the unsettling allure of change. Each encounter with Serena, each gentle word of wisdom she offered to a troubled customer, added another layer to the evolving narrative within him. At times, he would catch himself studying her from afar, as if trying to decipher the hidden meaning behind her every gesture. In the quiet moments before opening the store each morning, he would pause, lost in thought, grappling with the realization that his world was shifting in ways he could neither predict nor fully control. One quiet evening, as rain began to patter softly against the store's large front windows, the atmosphere inside turned introspective. The rhythmic sound of raindrops created a soothing cadence that encouraged reflection, and even the most restless souls seemed to find a temporary calm. Liam, taking a moment during his break, looked out at the rain and whispered to himself, "Sometimes nature reminds us that even the darkest clouds eventually clear." His words, simple and sincere, seemed to capture the essence of the transformation taking place within the store. Maria, standing behind the register with her ever-watchful eyes, observed the subtle changes in both customers and staff. The everyday exchanges carried a new weight, as if each word was laden with the promise of change and the potential for reconciliation. "It's in the quiet moments that we see the true measure of a person," she mused softly, her thoughts drifting back to Serena's steady voice during the dispute over the skincare product. "We all have a hidden side that only emerges when we are forced to face our own truths." In a particularly memorable instance, a long-time customer, Mr. Daniels, who had frequented the store for decades, engaged in a heartfelt conversation with Serena near the checkout counter. He was a gentle man, known for his soft-spoken wisdom and a lifetime of experiences that had taught him the value of compassion. "Miss Brooks," he began, his voice trembling with a mix of vulnerability and hope, "you remind me that life is full of surprises. I have seen many things in my time, and yet your presence here has made me question my own judgments. I once believed that wealth was measured only in money, but now I see that true richness lies in the kindness of one's heart. His words, sincere and unburdened by pretense, left Serena momentarily speechless. In that brief silence, the store seemed to hold its breath, as if acknowledging the profound truth that had just been spoken. Arthur, having observed this exchange from a distance, felt an unexpected pang of recognition. The simplicity and honesty of Mr. Daniels' words resonated deeply within him, stirring emotions he had long suppressed. Later that day, while closing the store, Arthur found himself alone in the quiet aftermath of the busy hours. The soft glow of the overhead lights illuminated rows of neatly arranged products, but for Arthur, the real illumination came from the revelations of the day. He realized that his rigid adherence to order had left little room for the messy, unpredictable beauty of human connection. With the days passing in a blur of introspection and subtle confrontations, the tension within the store grew to a boiling point that could no longer be ignored. One late afternoon, as shadows lengthened across the polished floor and the hum of the city outside began to fade into a soft lull, a confrontation that had been building for weeks finally erupted. A disgruntled customer, fueled by a recent series of misunderstandings, raised his voice near the entrance. "This is not a place for elitist snobbery," he shouted, his words slicing through the calm like a sharp gust of wind. His accusation, though directed at no one in particular, seemed to target the very atmosphere that had come to define the store in recent days. Arthur, his heart pounding, and his face flushed with a mix of anger and uncertainty, stepped forward. "Sir, please lower your voice. We are all here to find peace and understanding," he demanded, his voice echoing in the suddenly charged space. The customer's retort was cut short as Serena, who had been quietly observing from a distance, stepped forward with a dignified calm that silenced the room. "Perhaps," she said gently, "we should all remember that our differences are what make us human. Let us not allow misunderstanding to cloud the beauty of our shared journey." Her words, delivered with an elegance that belied the tension of the moment, had a profound effect on everyone present. The angry murmurs faded, replaced by a tentative silence filled with reflection. In that charged moment, Arthur's inner turmoil reached its peak. Standing before his staff, the customers, and the person who had unwittingly become the catalyst for his own awakening, he felt the full weight of his conflicting emotions. "I have spent my life believing in order and control," he admitted in a strained, almost trembling voice. "But today, I see that perhaps I have been too rigid in my judgments. Maybe, just maybe, there is room for change, a change that comes not from authority, but from understanding." His confession, raw and unguarded, hung in the air like a fragile promise. The store, which had long been a sanctuary of routine, now pulsed with the energy of transformation. In the days that followed the confrontation, small acts of kindness and moments of vulnerability began to weave a new tapestry of trust and empathy. Liam, ever the gentle spirit, continued to offer quiet support, his warm smile and encouraging words a balm for wounded hearts. Maria found herself deep in conversation with customers about the importance of looking beyond first impressions, while even Arthur, long a symbol of strict order, allowed himself moments of quiet introspection that revealed the cracks in his once impenetrable armor. Every encounter, every softly spoken word, built upon the last, creating an intricate web of rising tension and fragile hope. Arthur's internal struggle was mirrored in the subtle changes around him. The store, once a bastion of unyielding routine, had become a place where the old met the new, where prejudices were challenged by the undeniable power of human connection. And through it all, Serena remained a steady, unchanging presence, a quiet force that, without saying much, had managed to awaken the dormant hearts of those who had long lived in the shadows of their own assumptions. Now, as you read these unfolding events, imagine for a moment the weight of every unspoken word, the quiet battles fought in the space between expectation and reality. What if you were in their shoes, facing the slow, relentless challenge of changing deep-seated beliefs? Consider the power of a single act of understanding, the ripple effect it can have on a community bound by habits and preconceptions. In the midst of this slow revolution, the seeds of a dramatic twist were already being sown. Hushed conversations among customers hinted at secrets buried in Serena's past, whispers that perhaps she was not just a quiet shopper, but someone who carried with her a fortune hidden beneath layers of humility and resolve. These murmurs, like soft echoes in a vast hall, promised that the full truth of her identity would one day burst forth, altering the dynamics of the store and the lives of those who frequented it. Late one evening, when the store's lights dimmed to a soft glow and the usual bustle had given way to reflective solitude, Arthur sat alone in his office once more. The events of the day played over in his mind like a haunting refrain. He stared at the framed photo on his desk, the image of a younger man with bright, unclouded eyes, and wondered if that person still existed within him, buried beneath layers of duty and prejudice. In the quiet darkness, a single thought echoed, that every person, regardless of their past or their wealth, deserved a chance to be seen for who they truly were. As the tension of the day finally gave way to the silence of night, the store stood as a silent witness to the transformative power of empathy and the quiet courage of those willing to challenge the status quo. The rising conflict, once a storm threatening to tear apart the carefully constructed world of routine, had begun to dissolve into something far more profound, a slow, steady awakening to the possibility that change, however painful, was both necessary and inevitable. And so, in that space between dusk and dawn, where every shadow held a promise and every light a hint of redemption, the journey continued. The interactions, the small battles fought with words and glances, were all part of a larger narrative, a narrative that was still unfolding, inviting each of us to reflect on our own assumptions and to find within ourselves the courage to embrace a more compassionate, inclusive world. As the deepening dusk cloaked the store in a gentle, uncertain glow, the quiet murmur of routine gave way to a charged stillness. The day, which had been marked by a series of subtle confrontations and unspoken reckonings, now hung on the brink of an irreversible shift. The steady hum of conversation and the soft clink of merchandise had faded into a tense silence, as if every soul in the room sensed that the moment of truth was near. It happened suddenly, yet felt inevitable. Near the counter where Maria had spent countless hours offering kind smiles and measured words, an unexpected disturbance stirred the air. A well-dressed gentleman, whose tone had shifted from polite inquiry to raised anger, was arguing with another customer over a misunderstanding about a promotional discount. His voice, sharp and bitter, reverberated through the store, drawing every eye toward the scene. Arthur, who had been quietly managing his inner turmoil in his office, was jolted back to the front. He strode purposefully toward the escalating commotion, his footsteps measured and heavy with a mix of authority and apprehension. Before Arthur could interject, Serena stepped forward. Her presence, always calm and measured, now carried an undeniable weight, a quiet command that silenced the angry exchange almost as soon as it began. In a voice that was both gentle and firm, she addressed the agitated man. "Sir, let us not allow a moment of misunderstanding to mar the respect we owe one another. We are all part of this community, and sometimes the simplest acts of kindness can mend the deepest wounds." Her words, softly spoken yet resonant, had an immediate effect. The angry murmur subsided into a thoughtful quiet as the man's fury ebbed away into reluctant calm. Arthur paused, his eyes fixed on Serena as if trying to capture every nuance of her expression. There was something in the way her dark eyes held both sorrow and resolve that made his heart race, a mixture of admiration and something else he wasn't ready to name. Sensing his gaze, Serena turned her attention toward him. For a long moment, their eyes locked in a silent conversation that spoke of years of unspoken questions and the stirring of deeply buried truths. In that charged silence, Arthur's voice, low and trembling with a vulnerability he rarely allowed himself, broke the quiet. "Miss Brooks," he began, his tone betraying a mix of caution and genuine curiosity, "I have seen you here day after day, observing, listening, and quietly influencing the lives of everyone around you. I must ask, who are you truly? What is it that has brought you here in a place where every face is known and every rule is enforced?" Serena regarded him for a long, measured second before reaching into her modest handbag. With deliberate care, she produced a sealed envelope, its edges worn but its significance unmistakable. The envelope, she explained in a soft yet unwavering tone, contained documents that spoke of a legacy far removed from the ordinary lives of the store's patrons. "Arthur," she said, her voice steady as the quiet drum of rain beginning to tap against the store's front window, "I have lived most of my life in the shadows of assumptions. I chose to hide behind a simple guise, to experience life as it is lived by ordinary people. But you must know that I was born into great wealth, a fortune that, until today, I have kept secret not out of pride, but to see the world unfiltered by prejudice. A stunned silence followed her revelation. Arthur's eyes widened, and for the first time in his long career of rigid adherence to routine, he felt a palpable shift within himself, a collision of disbelief and an awakening of his own long-repressed empathy. The envelope trembled slightly in Serena's hand, a delicate symbol of the truth she had guarded for so long. Liam, who had been quietly tending to a stack of newly arrived goods near the back, leaned against a shelf, his eyes fixed on the unfolding drama. He had always believed that every person's worth lay in the kindness of their heart rather than in their wealth or social standing. Now, witnessing the revelation before him, he felt a surge of hope that perhaps even the most entrenched beliefs could be challenged and changed. Maria, standing at her register with her ever-watchful eyes, exchanged a look with Liam, a silent acknowledgement that what they were witnessing was a turning point, not just for Arthur, but for the entire community that gathered in that unassuming store. The air was thick with anticipation as Serena continued, her voice carrying an honest plea for understanding. "Arthur, I did not come here to flaunt my fortune or to disrupt your sense of order. I came here because I believe that true wealth is not measured in dollars or possessions, but in the richness of our interactions, the depth of our compassion, and the courage it takes to see beyond the surface. I have watched you for many years managing this store with unwavering precision, and yet I also saw a man who was silently battling his own inner conflicts. I chose this store, this community, to remind you, and all of us, that even the most rigid walls can be softened by empathy." Arthur's face flushed with a mixture of shame and astonishment. The steady, controlled persona he had cultivated for decades seemed to crumble in that single, profound moment. His mind raced back through years of unquestioned routine, of assumptions made without a second thought. The shock of Serena's words, of her unguarded honesty, left him speechless for a few long, heavy seconds. Finally, he managed to find his voice, though it was laced with uncertainty. "Serena, I never imagined," he began, trailing off as the enormity of her revelation sank in. "All these years, I assumed that someone who looked like you must have come here in need, that your calm and quiet manner was a mask for hardship. I was wrong. I see now that my assumptions were clouded by biases I never questioned." The store, which had been the stage for so many small, everyday dramas, now seemed to shimmer with a new, vibrant energy. Customers, who had long remained silent observers, began to murmur among themselves. Some exchanged glances of disbelief, while others wore expressions of dawning understanding. It was as if Serena's revelation had opened a door, inviting every person in the store to confront their own hidden prejudices. The tension in the room, which had been mounting over the course of the day, now found release in a flood of raw, honest emotion. A woman near the entrance, tears glistening in her eyes, stepped forward and spoke in a trembling voice. "I have always felt judged, unseen, and misunderstood. Today, I feel seen, truly seen, for the first time." Her words, simple yet laden with deep personal pain, resonated with many who had silently endured similar judgments. Others nodded, their faces softening as they recognized the universal truth that Serena had so bravely revealed. Arthur, still holding the envelope in his mind's eye, felt a weight lift from his chest, a burden of years spent clinging to outdated beliefs. The store manager, who had once prided himself on maintaining order now, understood that true order could only be achieved through understanding and compassion. In that moment, his role in the community transformed from that of an unyielding authority to that of a humble servant seeking redemption for past errors. As the night deepened, the store became a haven of shared vulnerability. Customers, staff, and even Arthur himself began to speak openly about their experiences, the quiet struggles with prejudice, the pain of being misjudged, and the hope that lay in the possibility of change. Liam's gentle voice broke the lingering silence as he remarked, "Tonight, we have all learned something precious. We have seen that every person, no matter how they appear on the outside, carries a story that is rich and complex. Let us honor that by treating each other with kindness." Maria's eyes shone with unshed tears as she added, "We have always been a community, but tonight we have become a family that learns from its mistakes and grows together." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of years spent witnessing both the beauty and the pain of human interaction. The climax of the evening arrived as Arthur, overcome by emotion, stepped forward and addressed the gathered crowd with a voice that trembled with sincerity. "I have managed this store for many years, believing that order and discipline were the keys to a well-run life. But tonight, I see that the true measure of a person lies in their capacity for empathy, for love, and for the willingness to change. I stand before you, humbled and ashamed of the prejudices I held, and I promise to strive every day to be better, a better manager, a better neighbor, and a better human being. His words, delivered with a raw vulnerability that few had ever witnessed from him, stirred the hearts of everyone present. In that moment of confession and catharsis, the twist that Serena's revelation had set into motion became clear. It was not merely her fortune that shocked Arthur, but the profound lesson that wealth and poverty, power and vulnerability are not determined by appearances. True wealth, as Serena had shown, lay in the capacity to give, to care, and to transform even the most hardened hearts through quiet acts of courage and kindness. As the hours passed, the storm of conflict subsided into a reflective calm. The community that had gathered in the small store continued to share their stories, stories of pain, resilience, and hope. Each narrative, woven into the tapestry of the night, served as a reminder that while prejudice may be deeply ingrained, it can be overcome by the simple yet powerful act of listening. The revelation of Serena's hidden fortune had done more than shock Arthur. It had shattered a long-held illusion that one's worth was tied solely to outward appearances. Liam, moved by the evening's events, later remarked softly to Maria as they tidied up the store after closing time, "Tonight, I felt something shift in the air. It's as if we've all been given a chance to start anew, to rewrite the story of who we are as individuals and as a community." Maria smiled gently, her eyes reflecting both hope and quiet sorrow for the wounds that had taken so long to begin healing. "Yes," she whispered, "sometimes it takes one brave soul to remind us that our differences are our strength. And sometimes it takes a secret revealed to us to see that kindness is the true currency of life." Even Arthur, standing alone for a few moments as the last of the customers drifted away into the cool night, felt a deep, unspoken gratitude. The store, once merely a sanctuary of order, had transformed into a crucible for change, a place where every interaction, every shared tear and smile, had the power to redefine the very essence of community. He gazed out the large front window, watching as the city lights flickered to life, and the distant hum of nighttime traffic melded with the soft whispers of the wind. In that quiet solitude, he promised himself that he would never again let fear and prejudice guide his decisions. The following morning, as the sun rose over the city with a promise of renewal, the store opened its doors to a scene transformed. The lingering tensions of the previous night had given way to a warm camaraderie that seemed to infuse every corner of the space. Arthur, with a newfound gentleness in his eyes, greeted each customer not as a subject to be managed, but as a cherished member of a larger family. Serena, ever graceful and enigmatic, moved through the aisles with a serene dignity that now shone with the light of honesty. Liam and Maria worked side by side, their smiles reflecting a quiet confidence born of shared understanding. In the weeks that followed, the impact of that transformative night rippled far beyond the store's polished floors. Arthur began implementing subtle changes, small gestures that invited conversation rather than judgment. He organized community evenings where people could share their stories, turning the store into a forum for open dialogue. Slowly, the rigid boundaries that once defined his world began to blur, replaced by a collective commitment to empathy and growth. Serena, meanwhile, continued to frequent the store with the same quiet consistency, her secret now known to all as a symbol of the strength that lies hidden in unexpected places. Her revelation had become a catalyst for change, a reminder that every person, regardless of background or circumstance, carried within them the potential to inspire transformation. With her discreet generosity and steadfast resolve, she not only challenged the assumptions of those around her, but also ignited a movement that extended into the broader community. People began to see one another through new eyes, and conversations about injustice and compassion, once stifled by fear and bias, blossomed into open, heartfelt dialogues. On a crisp autumn evening, during one of the community gatherings that Arthur had initiated, the entire store was filled with the soft murmur of shared memories and hopeful plans for the future. In a quiet corner, under the soft glow of fairy lights strung across the ceiling, Arthur addressed the assembled crowd. His voice, now imbued with both humility and conviction, resonated with every listener. "Tonight," he said slowly, "we stand together not as individuals defined by our differences, but as a community bound by our shared humanity. Let us remember that the true measure of a person is not in the fortune they inherit, but in the fortune of their spirit, in the kindness they bestow, and in the courage they show to face their own truths. His words, simple yet profoundly moving, left an indelible mark on every heart present. The store, once a silent battleground for clashing prejudices, had been transformed into a living testament to the power of empathy, understanding, and change. And as the evening drew to a close, a final call to action resonated softly through the gathered crowd, a gentle invitation to carry forward the lessons of that night. Share your stories, Arthur urged. Embrace the unexpected, and let kindness be the light that guides us through the darkness of our doubts. In that moment, as the community slowly dispersed into the night, the store remained bathed in a quiet, hopeful glow, a beacon of change in a world too often shadowed by fear. The journey of transformation was far from over, but the seeds of understanding had been sown deeply, promising a future where every person's worth was recognized and celebrated. For those who hear this story, let it be a reminder that prejudice is a barrier that can be broken by the simple act of opening one's heart. In every encounter lies the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to redefine what it means to truly see another human being. Let the story of Arthur, Serena, Liam, and Maria inspire you to question your own assumptions, to embrace the beauty of diversity, and to join in the quiet revolution of compassion that begins with a single, courageous act. Imagine for a moment that every time you encounter someone who challenges your view of the world, you take a step closer to understanding them, not by judging their outward appearance, but by listening to the story behind their eyes. As you walk your own path, may you find the strength to look beyond the surface, to share your own truth, and to help build a world where every heart is valued, every voice is heard, and every act of kindness echoes far beyond its moment. So let this be a call to action. Reach out, share your experiences, and let the light of empathy guide you through the shadows of ignorance. For in the end is not the fortune we possess, but the fortune we share in our hearts that truly defines us. And as you go forth, remember that every story has the power to change the world, one honest conversation at a time. The store, now forever transformed by that fateful day, stands as a living monument to the idea that even the most entrenched prejudices can be overcome when we dare to see the world through the eyes of compassion. And in that truth, we find the promise of a brighter, more inclusive tomorrow. A tomorrow where every individual is celebrated for the richness of their spirit, and where the simple act of kindness is enough to set the world alight with hope. If you found this story powerful, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Your support helps us bring more important stories to light.